welcome back to Tech Talk with Muka. Today we'll be discussing generative AI use cases and how DELL can help you pick and implement the right use case for your needs. I'm here with AI experts Navin Mukraj and Sirmitchell Sorells from DELL Technologies to help answer this question. So to start us off, can you, Navin and Sirmitchell, give us a quick intro about your experience?
Sure. Thanks, Namuka, and hi, Sirmitchell. Good day, everyone, or good evening. I'm Navin Mukraj. I'm a solutions principal here at DELL. I help customers with our consulting services as it relates to solving their business problems and also solutioning the generative AI product stack.
Awesome. And Sirmitchell?
Yeah, perfect. My name is Sirmitchell Sorells, and I am a strategic consultant focused on enablement, specifically working in the PowerCell group within DELL. And what I do is I help make complicated technical information simplistic and easy to consume, specifically for sellers and for people in marketing, pre-sales, and various other groups, so that we can better communicate our offerings to audiences like you and others. And as a part of that team, I am the one that's responsible for all AI content. So I can dibble and dabble around this topic a little bit.
And, turning something complex into something easy to understand is what we are looking forward to in this channel, especially when it comes to something like generative AI, which can seem elusive to some people, even though it's around us so much. And so just to start off the discussion, when it comes to generative AI, we've seen so many use cases. So when you're a customer and you don't really know what's best for you, how can you pick the right use case? And, how can DELL help?
Yeah, I think that Navin and I might have two different approaches to the same coin. There's so many different things to consider when an organization is going about deciding the use case that they're getting ready to make large investments in and potentially hedge the future of their operations on. I think the first thing to recognize is that we're not short of use cases in the world of AI. Most organizations will have at least 6 or more applications or relevant use cases that they can jump into that have been proven or have some type of historical evidence that there's going to be a positive impact on their business. I think the question that most customers have to answer is, what are their values? What are their business goals? What are their objectives? And how does this use case A, benefit those business outcomes in comparison to use case B, use case C? Because ultimately, what I believe is that organizations are going to, over time, implement multiple different AI use cases into their organization. It's just about prioritizing which ones and how their audiences, how their customers, how their staff, employees, etc., are going to take to the technology and in what order they want to distribute these new innovations. And so getting closer to the high-level strategy and aligning your AI operations to that is likely going to be the place that you want to start. And then from there, there's a lot of data considerations. I may have prioritized that from a business outcome perspective, we want to create chatbots that are customer facing, but we may realize that based off of the data, we haven't been recording enough phone calls, for example. So we don't have a large repository of questions and responses. We're relying on FAQ or some templatized data set that could impact the quality or the brand representation with said organization. So maybe we need to divert to another use case and then change our business practices and policies to collect more data so that we can build that application in the future. So sometimes the data set can also impact what you prioritized in the quality of the final product. But Navin?
Sure. So we have a 6-week consulting services engagement to help customers through that planning, if you will, or to determine how to prioritize those use cases. It's a 6-week engagement, and it's broken into 3 components. So you can think of it as the first 2 weeks would be to assess and look at the use cases that they may already have or business problems. So we try to look at it more from a problem and solutioning perspective. The following 2 weeks would be then doing the analysis and Also looking at the data governance. So because these use cases will be data driven, right? So it's essentially, once we've identified those use cases, it's then using the data science techniques to understand where the data is going to come from, to make that a data-driven solution. And then the final 2 weeks would be like a roadmap or a to be. So what would the environment look like, or what would the solution look like? So basically 3 steps: understand where they are. So ask the question. Number 2, find where the data is. And then the 3rd step is the roadmap.
It's a really good point about, letting the data lead. And then as Sirmitchell brought up, being flexible and thinking of a strategy, just because there might be multiple use cases to consider, not just one. And I was wondering, as you're talking about this, I'm sure you guys help customers that are, at enterprises of all different levels or all maturity levels, and across different verticals as well. So I was just wondering, how do you tailor this process to those verticals or maturity levels or enterprise levels? I'm sure since you do go to a discussion and the 6-week long process, you get to know the customer very well, but just based on experience working with, different types of enterprises, what have you noticed that you have to change when it comes to implementing generative AI? And I think this would be a good question for Sirmitchell, because I know you have a lot of different thoughts on, customers across different maturity levels and helping them get to where they need to be.
Yeah. So when you think about a customer's maturity, everyone in the market at some level is looking to go from a state of no AI to autonomous AI, right? And so you're going from a space where you need to learn more information. You're not sure what you're getting into. You don't know what you don't know. All the way to a quick maturity, or not a quick maturity, depending on your process, but all the way to a fully developed maturity where you not only have AI implemented into your environment or into your product line, but the AI is also making decisions on how to expand or grow that particular product line or that division, or how to advance the goals that it was set to do. And everywhere along that stage is going to require different investments in the technology, different investments into training and how you're operating your organization, operating your staff, how you're marketing, how you're rolling things out to the audience. And so one thing that we like to keep in mind is that when you're talking to different people at different maturity stages, you want to connect around the key goals of that stage. If you're at level 0, you're trying to get to a level 1, which is, I have level 0 being, I have no AI at all, and level 1, hey, I'm interested in AI, I want to deploy something. Then we're talking about pilots. And from that space, we want to get very specific around what does a pilot look like, all the things that we just talked about before in reference to identifying the use case. But then from that point, identifying, okay, what do we need to execute a pilot? Can we execute a pilot with the resources we currently have? What type of additional resources would be needed? What type of partners would need to come into place? There's a whole lot that Navin's team does to help guide customers through this particular process. But once it's been decided that, hey, a pilot needs to be executed, we can go forth from there. And I think from a communication perspective, if you're communicating with audiences and trying to help them understand what level they are at and what they need to be doing, understanding maturity is extremely important. And if you're the customer, if you're the creator, the developer of the AI offering for whatever audience or customer base that you're developing it for, you want to recognize what stage you're at as well, and take the time to understand that, okay, we've executed some AI pilots in the past. Now we're at a place where we're looking for larger wins, larger successes. We're beyond level 1. We're at level 2 now. We're looking to really move to an emerging status, and we're looking to expand. And maybe from that point, you're trying to operationalize. You want to start consolidating your AI. You want to start making sure that all of the data sets and functionalities within your organization are embedded with AI as a foundation. Then you continue to grow, you continue to scale from one stage to the next, and you make the proper investments along the way. And from a vertical perspective, when we think about DELL and our relationships, what we like to do is to sit down and vet the best software vendors, the best ISVs that are in the particular markets, and then use those relationships to help guide our customers towards success. So depending on what vertical you're in or what space you're in, there are so many different vendors that are doing amazing work in that space. But what allows that work to really pay off and deliver the final output goal is going to be the underlying software, the underlying hardware that's supporting that environment, and what the networking structure looks like, what the data pipelines look like, and how all of this is orchestrated to help you meet your goals from a safety perspective, from a compliance, security perspective, from a customer expectation perspective, UX perspective, and all the other considerations that come into play.
It's a really good point about, the guidances they provide for DELL to learn about the company so we can help them. But it's also about the company understanding it themselves so that, as they move through these stages, they can also, independently think of different use cases and then bring it up to you and, see what kind of value it provides. So if I'm getting that right. And Navin, any thoughts on that?
I think the only thing I would add is that we work across a variety of customers, commercial, enterprise, and DT Select, and they do have different requirements. Constraints it's probably a big a big item that we see. Constraints in terms of so typically we don't want to see projects taking longer than 6 months to a year within that time frame to realize value, especially in these economic times, right? And then one of the other things that we have, the capabilities within our services, the ProConsult Advisory Generative AI services is really to hone in on specifics like multivariate data within the customer environment to really understand in a two-dimensional manner. And we have, we basically would put together like a radar chart to look at those strengths. So it's sort of like a spider graph, and customers can then visually understand, right? They can visually understand with industry best practices and lessons learned that we bring to the table, combined with where they are on that spider web. And the areas, then that tells us, so they may be, maybe they need help in terms of education or training the users. Well, then we can focus in that area.
I see. Gives direction as well as, benchmarking
Correct.
compared to
Right.
where other companies are. And, you talked about how you have, a goal of 6 months to a year to realize that value. And I was just actually curious, when you're measuring the actual benefit that Generative AI has provided to companies you've used them and their employees, what are some performance indicators that you look at, or what do you actually look at to see how it's impacted the company?
Sure, good question. When we, as part of the assessment, we try to tease out what the business problem is, to understand that and look at it in terms of value. So an economic equation, for example. There may be some customers that want to get more customers or drive revenue, or maybe just reduce the intake of calls. They may have a help desk and they're getting 100,000 calls and they need to optimize that in some fashion. So there are metrics which we call key performance indicators, KPIs, and those are all defined as success criteria, so that when we are driving towards the end goal, we are measuring against those success factors, right? What does good look like? So we kind of establish what does good look like, understanding the business requirements, understanding those KPIs, and then the use cases, or the test cases that we'll execute at the end performs that measurement. So it's sort of like a feedback loop.
Yeah. I know it's sometimes hard to see the, benefit in tangible ways. So it's really cool that there's actual measurable KPIs and we can see the benefit that it's providing for companies. And I'm guessing, when you were talking about maturity level, Sirmitchell, you have those criteria to help the companies know when they're moving on from one maturity level to another. But I was just wondering if you had any other thoughts on this question yourself about how companies can measure the actual benefit that Generative AI is providing for them.
I think Navin touched on it pretty well. Every organization is going to have their own outside of the science of AI, there are business applications, right? And when I speak to people in sales, people in marketing, our goal typically is going to be it starts with working with whoever the workload owner is, the line of business owner is, whoever owns the project. They have a very clear, defined outcome that they're looking to reach that's consumer oriented, typically, or bottom line oriented, efficiency oriented, production oriented. There's a result. And then within that larger result, that larger goal, there are X amount of KPIs, which Navin did a great job of kind of defining. And all these KPIs are required to meet that larger result. I think the key is not allowing yourself to realize too much mission drift along the way, because that can definitely happen where you start with one particular goal and it evolves, sometimes in a positive way, right? And sometimes in a way that's not ideal for the investment that you made. And so it's always keeping top of mind, what is the business outcome, the business objective, what is the goal that we're looking to achieve, and do the KPIs that we've created ultimately line up to the net result that we're investing in. And so keeping your eyes, I guess, on the prize, if you will, eye of the tiger, traditional language here is really beneficial.
It makes sense. And when you're looking at the actual implementation, Sirmitchell, you brought up the hardware and software. What does the general generative AI stack look like? And how do the components change across these different use cases? And if you could just give a brief overview about the components that are necessary for generative AI solution.
Yeah, so I'm going to keep mine high level and let Navin jump in deeper, as he's dealt with the different architectures in more depth than I have. But fundamentally, you're going to need compute resources. Well, let's go back. You're going to need storage resources, because for any AI project, there's going to be a data set from which you're building all your models on, right? And that's going to have to sit on some type of dedicated storage, or the storage could be at the edge. You have to have a storage architecture strategy that's specific to the AI project that you're launching, right? So there's a storage element, depending on the actual output of the product, the destination, where it sits, how it operates. The offering will mold to meet that. In addition, you're going to need compute resources. And those compute resources are going to be to build or to just execute a model. The model is basically the knowledge of the output of the AI engine. So if you taught your model the differences between every fruit, and its job is to help you sort fruit in the factory, then the knowledge of all of the fruit and all the different variables and pixels between each picture and everything that the system has learned to identify variations in fruit, that's going to be the model. And that model has to either be built, or that model is going to have to be tuned regularly, or that model is going to have to be executed using compute resources. And depending on where you are, whether you're working with pre-developed models and you're fine-tuning them, or whether you're building your own models, all these different variables will determine what type of compute stack you're going to need to support that. Next, when you think about how you're going to deploy the model into the space, you then have to start thinking about your networking resources. Where are the models going to live, and where are they sending their signals to? Are they calling home to a data center, or do they live within the data center? Where does the tech live? How close is the tech to the data center? If it's a manufacturing AI model, it's likely that you're very close to a lot of your data resources. If you're dealing with, I don't know, something that's an IoT devices that are spread out, you're in utilities, you have IoT devices at every single home, that's a completely different AI strategy that you're going to be putting in place. And so what does networking look like? Is there a hybrid plan associated with that? And how are you structuring it? So those three components are going to be huge. And then you wrap that up in compliance and data protection, and you start to get an understanding of what your stack is going to look like. But I'll pass it to Navin, as he may have more insights than that.
Yeah, I think, Sirmitchell, I think you identified the components of the stack. I'll probably focus more on the higher level.
Mm-hmm.
We do have a lot of partners. So once, we understand what the models would look like, we then use things, for example, like Run AI, which fractionalizes, for example, the GPUs.
Mm-hmm.
We also use MLflow, which altogether, those tools are just examples. It's essentially to help the customer to get those use cases at scale. What we essentially want to do is create a flywheel. Generative AI, in simple terms, is automation at scale. And that's where we want to get to. We want to look at the customer's organization and extract as much toil as possible. So imagine gears, right? And the generative AI stack is essentially a connective tissue that allows the customer to automate those use cases and achieve automation at scale. So we have services such as LLM Ops, which essentially you've probably heard of DevOps, right? Which is that CI/CD pipeline. It's continuous development of the use cases, training of the models, and then support. And so if you can think of a flywheel, right? So, but we start off foundationally with smaller, easy to implement use cases, and we get to more complex ones, right? As we bring the customer along. You know, there's an old saying that all boats rise with the rising tide, right? So, you know, that's the analogy I'd like to use. Yeah.
Oh, I see. And yeah, I'm sure customers can feel really confident knowing we're along with them on that journey. And, we want to see them go through starting out to going to those complex use cases. I'm really thankful for you guys to be here to answer those questions. And thank you for watching, guys. We're going to explore these topics more in the future in our next podcast. And we'll also be releasing a blog where we'll be looking at some real companies that have leveraged generative AI through DELL's generative AI platform and their journey through that life cycle that Navin and Sirmitchell were just talking about. And we're going to explore the different benefits achieved as well as looking at the stack. So I'm looking forward to more episodes. And thank you again, Navin and Sirmitchell, for being here.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Stay
Take
tuned.
care,
Bye.
everybody.